Good afternoon, my name is Pavlo. Today we will get acquainted with Chernivtsi. The tour will take us 2 hours and we start now from the central square. So first of all, it is the center of Chernivtsi. The population of Chernivtsi is 265,000 people, and Chernivtsi is divided into 2 parts. One part is on the right bank of the river Prut, and the other side, which you can see on the horizon line, this is the left bank of Chernivtsi. It is called Sadgora. This is the main street. This is the way to the south. The distance from Chernivtsi to the Romanian border is only 40 kilometers. It's straight to the south. And this is the way to the north. You have to go from Chernivtsi 550 kilometers to the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, this direction to the northeast. And this way to the northwest, you should go about 300 kilometers to another big Ukrainian city, which is Lviv. So the old name of this square was Ringplatz, or Market Square. There was a market on the square, and this square was surrounded by the hotels. For example, you can see behind my back on the corner to the right from Bank, the pale yellow building, which is now the Allure Inn Hotel. It was the Hotel Gutsul. Then on the left corner of the central square, you see Privatbank and the department of Kievan Institute for Trade and Economics. It was the Hotel Black Eagle. Then this way, the pale yellow building is the former Hotel Vice. Then next to it, white beautiful building. Today it's an art museum, but it used to be the Hotel Russia on the same place. Then you also can see the town hall. Town hall was built in 1847. It's still our city council and the office of our mayor. Then this way you can see the former Hotel Bellevue. It means nice view. It is French language. So some say that when famous Italian opera singer Enrico Caruso visited our town, he stayed in this Hotel Bellevue, and he once went out on this balcony of the second floor, and he even sang for a while for the crowd of people who came here together to see Caruso himself. Then between these 2 corner buildings, this is the beginning of the Pedestrian Street, which is now named after Ukrainian writer Olga Kobylyanska, lady. And the old name of this street was Herrengasse, which means in German language the street of nobility. It is the only pedestrian street in Chernivtsi city. Then a few words also about this town hall. So we have the daily tradition in Chernivtsi. At 12 o'clock, the live man, the trumpeter, the musician, comes out on the tower of this town hall with his trumpet, and he is playing the fox melody Marichka on the 4 sides of the horizon line. This is the daily tradition. It happens every day at noon. Since 2008. In 2008 we have celebrated the 600 years anniversary of Chernivtsi. This is late classicism, 1847, as I said. In this year in Austria, at that time Chernivtsi was part of Austria, there was revolution and serfdom was abolished. Then you see also the pale yellow letters above the cornice, inscription. It's an old Latin proverb. It says Viribus unitis, and you can also see on the left side the translation into Ukrainian. Спільними зусиллями. In English it means by joint efforts. It was the motto of Austro-Hungarian Empire, which consisted of many different nationalities and national parts, but they called for cooperation between all its parts, so that all citizens of Austria would feel their patriotism to Austro-Hungarian Empire and would work for the development of this state. And now it is the motto of Chernivtsi city. We still say that we have Ukrainians, some Russians, some Romanians, Moldavians living in Chernivtsi, also some people of other nationalities, but we all have to be friendly with each other and cooperate for the development of Chernivtsi city today. You can also see above the inscription Chernivtska Mieska Rada, which says Chernivtsi City Council, the coat of arms of Chernivtsi. There you can see on the red shield an open gate. It is the symbol of transition. And inside the trident, the national coat of arms of Ukraine. Why the gate? Because again, you see this main street. It is part of an old merchant's way which connected the Black Sea on the south and the Baltic Sea on the north. Chernivtsi was mentioned for the first time in the document which you can see on the wall. It is the charter issued by Moldavian Prince Alexander Chelbun, or Alexander the Kind, to merchants from Lviv in 1408. So Lviv at that time was part of Poland and Chernivtsi was part of Moldavian Principality. So merchants from Poland would travel along this merchants' way down the way to Istanbul, to the Ottoman Empire, to Turkey, to the Black Sea, and they were obliged to pay here customs fees. So this gate means the customs service. So where people have to pay customs taxes. Also, when we look back on this wall, this is the only place which was destroyed during the Second World War. I must admit that Chernivtsi was very little destroyed during the Second World War, and this is the only place. Some say that in 1941 the German airplane flew above the city and it dropped the bomb on the square, and those buildings were destroyed. In 1941 the ruins were demolished and this wall was designed. In the Soviet period, on this wall we had the map of the Soviet Union, and now since 2008, when we celebrated the 600 years anniversary, since this first written note, we got this banner with the copy of these documents. About the history a little bit of Chernivtsi. First of all, the name of Chernivtsi is derived from the name of the Old Slavic fortress Chern. Chorny in Ukrainian means black, so there was the Black Fortress. It was situated on the opposite side, on the opposite bank of the river Prut. It was in the 11th century. Then Tatars invaded, the state decayed here, and in the 14th century the new Moldavian Principality emerged. It existed until the end of the 18th century. At the end of the 18th century, in 1774, Bukovina and the city was occupied by Austria. Austrians stayed here for 143 years, till 1918, till the end of the First World War. Exactly in the Austrian time, Chernivtsi turned into the real city, because before the time when Austrians occupied this town, this province, the population of Chernivtsi was not more than 4,000 citizens, and at the end of the Austrian period it grew up to 90,000 citizens. At the end of the First World War, Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed, and in the Austrian times, on this place where you see the sign on this ground, there was the monument, the copy of sculpture of Michelangelo, Pietà, Virgin Mary, who was sitting, and she was holding the body of crucified Jesus on her hands, and the two angels on the two sides and the cross on the back. This monument was standing here for 100 years in the Austrian time. Then in the 1918, Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed, and Chernivtsi was proclaimed to be the Ukrainian city. But Ukrainians didn't have enough military power to defend their rights and to keep this city be Ukrainian, and Romania occupied the city very quickly. At the end of 1918, already Chernivtsi and the whole Bukovina province, 40 kilometers to the north, up to the river Dniester, was occupied by Romania. Romanians decided to remove this monument, and they have erected on this place, where you see now this cross, the new military monument, which would symbolize the liberation of Chernivtsi from Austrian power and unification with Romania. The square got its new name, Piața Unirii, which means the square of unification with Romania. And this monument was presenting the Romanian soldier who was marching. In front of him there was a girl with flowers, presenting for liberation to Romanian soldiers. Behind the soldier there was a bull, the wild oryx, who was stepping over the black eagle. Oryx was the symbol of Romania, and eagle symbol of defeated Austria. This monument was here until the Second World War. In 1940, the Soviets occupied the city. this Romanian monument was demolished. In 1941, Romanians, the allies of Nazi Germany, returned to Chernivtsi. Soviets retreated. They destroyed the Soviet star, which replaced the Romanian monument. And during the Second World War, until March 1944, city was under Romanian occupation. In March 1944, the Soviets returned, Germans and Romanians retreated, and the star was renovated on this place. In 1951, the monument to Lenin was erected here, and Lenin was standing here for 40 years until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. So now this place is vacant. We can see this cross here. It commemorates the victims of Maidan, of those activists who were killed during last revolution in Kiev in Maidan. On the other side of the square you see the monument to Taras Shevchenko. It's from 1999. It's the most famous Ukrainian national poet and artist. Behind my back you can see the pale white building. It is the youngest building on the square. It was constructed in 1901. Today it's an art museum, art gallery. In the Soviet period it was the city committee of the Communist Party, and originally it was built as the Savings Bank of Austria by architect Hubert Hessner, Austrian architect who was 29 years old when he made this project. This is a nice example of Vienna secession style, Jugendstil, or just modern style. On the facade you can see the beautiful Majolika panel. It is the allegory of the prime time of Austro-Hungarian Empire, where you see the 12 Olympic gods and goddesses. Each figure symbolizes certain province of Austria. So we can see there are 12 figures and 12 provinces, and our province had the name Bukovina. Buk is the name of the tree, it's a beech tree, so Bukovina means the land of beech tree forests. So as it used to be the bank, you can see on the gate the logo of the bank. This is the bee, you see here the white bee. It symbolizes savings. That means that the hard-working bee usually collects nectar and brings it to the beehive. So it's an old logo of Sparkasse or Raiffeisenbank. And this gate was renovated about 15 years ago, but now it's an art museum. Now we are on the theater square. You can see the beautiful music and drama theater named after Olga Kobylanska. The theater was built in 1905 by the project of famous Vienna company Fellner and Helmer. These are the names of two partners, architects, who designed in their career 46 theaters and opera houses all around the Central and Eastern Europe. In Ukraine, their most famous project is Odessa Opera House, which is considered to be one of the most beautiful operas in the world. Also, they built two opera houses in Vienna, and this Chernivtsi theater was their 41st project. I must say that we have a twin theater. The same theater building is situated in Germany, in Bavaria, in the city Fürth. The story says that the project was designed for Chernivtsi, but it was denied because city council didn't have money to pay for it, because the fee was too high, and they denied it. The project sold this project. The architects sold this project to Germany, to Fürth. It was realized there, and only 2 years later, then it was built in Chernivtsi by the same project, but for less money. The theater was built within 14 months, so it was built in 1 year and 2 months only. Originally, in front of the theater, there was a monument to Friedrich Schiller, the German drama writer. Then, in Romanian period, in the interwar period, Schiller was removed, and in 1940, in the first coming of the Soviets, the monument to Lenin was erected. Lenin was beheaded during the Nazis and Romanian occupation. There are photos preserved with Lenin with no head standing in front of the theater. And today we can see the monument to Olga Kobylanska. Above the entrance to the theater we can see the scene from the tragedy of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. On the main facade we can see the bas-reliefs of Wagner and Shakespeare, and on the lateral facades we could see there the busts of Pushkin, Shevchenko, Schiller, Goethe, Mozart, Haydn, Schubert and Beethoven. The theater is called the Dream of Gold and Velvet, and it is very well preserved. It's not an opera house, it's just the music and drama theater. Near the theater, to the left side, the highest, the tall building with the grey roof, steeple, it is the building which belongs to Medical University. It is called the Academic Palace. Originally it was built in 30s of the 20th century as the cinema Scala. Before the Second World War it was the hall of the Jewish society Morgenreuth, and after the Second World War it was the last state Jewish theater in the whole Ukraine. Now it's a beautiful concert hall which belongs, as I said, to Medical University. This is the Medical University administrative main building. Originally it was constructed in 1906 as the Bukovinian Chamber for Trade and Commerce. Above the windows of the second floor you can see still there the coats of arms of professions, the mosaic shields which show the coats of arms of different trade unions. There are 14 of them. Then to the right side of the theater, from the theater, the high blue building, it's the former Jewish National House. Today it's the Central Palace of Culture. On the steeple on the roof there used to be the Star of David. It was removed during the Second World War, and there is also the statue of an eagle. Under the eagle there is a date of construction 1908. And maybe later we'll come closer, you will see also the beautiful atlases on the facade of this building. This building looks to be like the Soviet, but in fact it was built at the end of 30s when Chernivtsi belonged to Romania, and it used to be the new palace of Romanian culture. The architect Horii Creanghe from Bucharest was very well known at the time, and the professional architects would say that it is the building of the very high value. Of course it's not similar to the neighbor buildings, that's why some people dislike it. But the Romanians had an idea to show that they bring the new style to Chernivtsi. On the most upper floor there is an open terrace from where you could get the great view on the theater square and on the city center generally. I must also admit that the architect who designed this building, he also suggested to deepen the whole square. Originally it was flat. It didn't have these stairs, didn't have this deepening, and now when we just approach to the square from this side, we still get the great view on the theater, which is actually the lowest building in the ensemble on this square. This was an idea of this architect Horii Creanghe. Then we have here the Walk of Fame. You see the stars. There are 40 of them, and around the stars you can see and read the names of famous artists who were born in Chernivtsi region. These are the poets, the singers, the movie actors, the theater actors, and one of the most famous Ukrainian songs is called Chervona Ruta. It was sang for the first time in 1971, exactly from the place where now I am standing, and it was shot in the same way like Vlad is now making this movie. And this song became very popular in the Soviet times. And I must say that the author Volodymyr Ivasyuk was also the student of Medical Institute, which is now the Medical University. Here we can see the hammered map of Chernivtsi region. Ukraine is the largest state in Europe by the territory, and its territory is divided into oblasts or regions. Chernivtsi is the capital of one of these oblasts. This is the map of Chernivtsi Oblast. It is the smallest by the population and by the territory. Here is Chernivtsi city, here is the border with Romania. The distance is 40 kilometers. This is the border with Moldova, 50 kilometers. And this is the flow of the river Dniester. Then it flows further to the southeast and tributes to the Black Sea. It flows on the border between Ukraine and Moldova. We have another river in Chernivtsi, it is called Prut. Prut starts in the Carpathian Mountains, then it flows across Chernivtsi, and it flows on the border between Moldova and Romania. The river Prut tributes to Danube. In this part of Chernivtsi region we have Carpathian Mountains, which stretch further to the south. And I must say, when we speak about Bukovina, so the Bukovina would have such borders. This is the northern Bukovina, and this is the southern Bukovina. Southern Bukovina is located in Romania. Bukovina, the single province in Austrian and in Romanian times, was divided for the first time in 1940 when the Soviets came here. So the majority of the population of the northern Bukovina are Ukrainians, and the southern Bukovina are Romanians. But of course we have here some Romanian community, and there in Romania we have Ukrainian community. Here is the town Hotin, which is one of the best provinces. There is one of the best fortresses in Ukraine. So you can imagine that up to the river Dniester, this was the most northern border of the Ottoman Empire, because for almost 250 years Moldavian Principality was under the power, was the vassal of the Ottoman Empire. So Hotin used to be the Turkish fortress, and there would be the territory of Poland. Here we would have Kamenets-Podilsky, another great fortress, which was the Polish one. Behind my back, this is the building of the regional administration and regional council of Chernivtsi Oblast, government of our oblast. It used to be the Palace of Justice in Austrian times. The building is also from those times, from 1906. There are even the dates of construction on the facade, 1904, 1906. We call this building usually in Chernivtsi as the building with lions. You see two sculptures of the nice lions in front of the entrance. Also the nice entrance door, and behind the open door you can see also a little bit the beautiful interior of this building. As the Palace of Justice, the court, above the main facade there are two sculptures which symbolize justice. Who symbolize justice? These are Goddess Justice, who is sitting to the right. She is a bit strange here, a bit unusual, because she is removing her blindfold from her eyes. And to the left side, this is Nemesis, goddess of retribution, who symbolize punishment, the executive branch of legislation. This building has mixed style. The ground on the first floor look a bit like the classicism, and the upper floors are revetted with red and green and white ceramic tiles. This material is called clinker. So this is just the decorative tile which looks like the brick, but it's not the brick in fact. On the facade you can also see the word lex. In Latin it means the law. So this massive building was built very quickly in 2 years, and now this is the government of Chernivtsi region. This is the monument to Romanian classical poet Mihai Eminescu, who studied in Chernivtsi in the school number 1. Above him there is the evening star, in Romanian Luceafărul. This is the most famous poem of this poet. This building looks very Soviet, but actually once it was the beautiful temple which was used by the Jewish community. It was built in a neo-Moorish style. It had beautiful dome, it had small minarets, beautiful stained windows and big doors. It had magnificent interior, built in 1877 by the project of Julian Zakharevich, famous Lviv architect. But unfortunately during the Second World War it was burned down, and later after the war in the Soviet period there was an effort to demolish it. They made to explode it. This effort was unsuccessful because the walls were too stable, too massive, and they could not demolish it, so they decided to redesign it into the cinema. So now it's the cinema, a former synagogue, and we call it Cinemagog today. The Jewish community in 1910 comprised 32% from the total population of Chernivtsi, and of course they made quite a big contribution to the development of Chernivtsi. This building looks very Soviet, and it is Soviet. It is the Stalin neo-Baroque style, we can call it so. After Kiev, central of Kiev was destroyed during the Second World War. So after the war, it was rebuilt exactly with the buildings of that style. We have the small example of that style in Chernivtsi as well. This is an example of the typical Romanian style, the living apartments built in the 30s. There was another kind of boom of construction in 30s before the Second World War in Chernivtsi, and on the background there are buildings from the Austrian time. Now we are on the Philharmonic Square. This is our concert hall, Philharmonic, built in 1877. Famous singers and piano players gave concerts here, like Caruso, Solomia Krushelnitska, Shaliapin, Rubinstein, Mykola Lysenko, Vertinsky. And down there you see the church. It's an Orthodox Ukrainian church of Saint Paraskeva the Serbian. It was built in 1862. In the Soviet period it was not functioning, and it was used as the chess club. So the chess were played there inside. This square, now we see sakura trees growing here, but 20 years ago there was an old covered market built in 30s, and it was very densely here, many people and lots of trade, and not very tidy. So the city council decided not to renovate it, but just simply to demolish it, and they designed there the new fountain and planted these sakura trees. From this side, one of the most beautiful buildings on the square, the former Hotel Bristol, built in 1905. It was the hotel of the business class, as we would say today. There were 3 elevators, 75 very good apartments, and on every floor there used to be even the small conference hall. It's again popular in Chernivtsi, Jugendstil, modern style. Then near the hotel, by the way, today it is used as a dorm for the students of medical university. You can imagine that in such a historical buildings there is a dorm for the students. Let's come closer to the monument to Ferenc Liszt, famous Hungarian piano player and composer. Let's cross the street here. So this is the small monument which was presented by Hungarian consulate from Uzhhorod, from Transcarpathia, and to commemorate the visit of composer Ferenc Liszt, a small figure of Ferenc Liszt. Ferenc Liszt visited Chernivtsi in 1847. He gave here 2 concerts, and the monument was made in the form of the piano, which stands on the side. On the back there is a button. When we come and push the button, we can hear the music Hungarian Rhapsody, written by the Ferenc Liszt. Tourists also like to polish the nose of the Ferenc Liszt. It means that they have chance to find their love in Chernivtsi. This is the post office in Chernivtsi. It was built in 1889. This is the typical Austrian project. On the facade you see 2 sculptures. To the right side, this is the goddess Iris, goddess of rainbow. She is symbolizing the communication, trade, transportation. And what is interesting, there is an interesting detail. Under the feet of the Iris you can see the wheel, but from the train. So it symbolizes the tradition and the progress. To the left side there is Mercury, a goddess of again of transportation, of the post, of merchants, of the salesmen and robbers, by the way. Also you can see to the left from Mercury the electrical pile, so the pile for electricity and for telegraph. So again the tradition and the progress. It was in Austrian times, of course, the business center, the post office. It faced on the opposite side. There was the luxurious hotel Gottlieb and the grain stock. Unfortunately, the opposite side of the street was bombed during the Second World War. but the post office was preserved, so let's come inside the post office. Here you can see the old mailboxes from the beginning of the 20th century, which were preserved in this building. They are not functioning anymore, but here you can still see them. You see the interior. The interior, of course, is not Austrian. It was renovated after the Second World War because inside the building was destroyed. There was a fire inside. Only the exterior is original. And the last renovation took place here 10 years ago. On the walls you can see the pictures of Chernivtsi artist Andriy Holomenyuk. His workshop is right across the street. He painted here some historical pictures. For example, this is a German Lutheran church in Chernivtsi. This picture is showing us the monument to Maria Theresia, which was standing on the former Austrian square, which is now the cathedral square. The monument did not preserve, but behind the monument there is the prison. It is still there. The prison is over 200 years old. Next picture shows us the gate, which was built due to the visit of Franz Josef in Chernivtsi. On the gate there was inscription Viribus Unitis, by joint efforts. There was a two-headed black Austrian eagle, and on the background we see the Roman Catholic Church. It stands on the place where the main street goes. You can imagine that the gate was built only for 2 months. After the visit of Franz Josef, it was removed. Next picture shows us the monument which was on the central square, Pieta, with the body of crucified Jesus. It is the place where we have started our tour. Let's go on. Here we can see the picture of our theater. We see in front of the theater the monument to Friedrich Schiller, which is not preserved. This is the picture of an old wooden St. Nicholas church from 1607. It is the oldest wooden church. It is preserved. Next picture. This is the military monument, the Black Eagle, to commemorate the soldiers of the 41st Infantry Regiment from the Bukovina. Unfortunately, the monument was destroyed in the Soviet times in 1949. And this picture shows us the former look of the cinema, the temple, the main temple of the Jewish community of Chernivtsi. You see its beautiful neo-Moorish style, and you can compare to how it looks today. Of course, not so beautiful as in old times, because it was burned down in 1941 in July when Romanians occupied the city, and the Soviets were trying also to demolish it, but it keeps standing still. Here you can see the new design of the building. You see different rare stamps. So it was made 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Now we are on the first Austrian square of Chernivtsi. As the Austrians occupied the city in 1774, they write that on the territory of Chernivtsi there were a bit more than 200 wooden houses which were covered with roofs made of the straw. So Chernivtsi looked rather as a village. There were no stone buildings at all. The first stone building is this one, the house of the general, Enzenberg. The name of the street was Enzenberg Hauptstraße. That is the second stone building in Chernivtsi over there. Today it's the puppet theater. It was the house of the colonel. Later it became the casino for the Austrian officers. This is the Roman Catholic Church. Of course, the city which belongs to Austria could not be without a Catholic church. And it was built first on this place where I am now standing. Later it was rebuilt across the street. This church is over 200 years old, and on the wall there is the sundial, which also always shows the Central European time in Chernivtsi. Now it goes 1 hour back from the present Chernivtsi time, which goes by the Kievan time. There is an old Vienna organ inside this Roman Catholic church. It has still old stained glass and frescoes on the walls, and it has always been active even during the Soviet times, never been closed. On the crossroad there you can see the beautiful house, building with apartments. It is known in Chernivtsi as a ship house because it really looks a bit like the ship. There is a legend about this building that it was constructed by the order of old rich man who retired, and he worked all his life as a sailor and then became a captain. Here, living far away from the sea, from the ocean, he missed sea very much. So he ordered from an architect the building so it looked like the ship, like the boat. He wanted to live on his retirement on the ship, like in his youth. And he and his brother had apartment on the second floor, and they used this balcony as a stem of the boat. There were two steering wheels. They had a habit every morning to go out on this stem of the boat. Each would stand near his own steering wheel, and they liked to do morning exercises. Also, you can imagine as a tram would go down this main street. We had in Chernivtsi the tram line since 1897 until 1965. Now we don't have trams anymore in Chernivtsi, unfortunately. Why the tram line was removed? Because the landscape in this part of the city is very complicated. It's very steep, so it was very difficult for trams to go up and down this steep slope. Then here is the monument to the 600 years anniversary. On the other side of this monument there is the inscription in 7 languages. It says, "To my native city," and in 7 languages, because in this way many people of different nationalities would say. So Hungarians, Romanians, Ukrainians, Jewish, Germans, Polish would call this city to be their native. This is the school street, and this is the Jewish school nowadays. And now let's go along this school street to the Turkish bridge. And now we are in front of the oldest part of Chernivtsi. Down there you see the square of a Turkish well. You see the building, which looks a bit like the chapel. In fact, this is a Turkish well, which was built at the beginning of the 18th century. At that period, Chernivtsi was part of Moldavian Principality, but it was under the power of the Ottoman Empire. So the well had the name the Prince well, because it had a great meaning. It was used for getting the drinking water. On the steeple of this Turkish well, there is a half moon, the Turkish symbol, and near the Turkish well to the right side there is an old bath. It was used by the Jewish community. They called it mikvah, and today it's still used as a bath, public bath, or people like to say Turkish bath. Near the well also you can see from the left side kind of the pond, covered with glass like pond. There are big containers down there, and they are filled with groundwater. There you can see the natural level of the groundwater here in this part of the city. In Austrian times this was the pond which was just covered, or the pool with technical water. It was covered, and if the cavalry would come to Chernivtsi, they needed to take some water to give water to their horses, or the firemen would need water. They would use this pond, which is to the left side from the well, and well was used only for taking and getting the drinking water. So this is the Turkish square. I already told you about the fortress Chern. It was built on the opposite bank of the river Prut in the 12th century, and at that time it was part of Galician Principality. In 1259 the Tatars military leader Burundai ordered to Prince Danilo, the prince of Galician Volhynian Principality, to destroy all his fortresses. So people had to demolish the settlement behind the river Chern. They had to leave this flat land behind the river. They crossed the river, came to this height, to these hills, and they founded here the settlement Chernivtsi with the old name but on the new place. Also behind the river you can see the hill. This is still part of Chernivtsi, the district which is called Sadgora. Originally it was another town, but in 1965 it was united with Chernivtsi as a third district of Chernivtsi. So Sadgora by the territory is even bigger than the city itself here on the right bank, but there lives only 16% of the population. In Sadgora there is a huge enterprise which is the market. There is a big Chernivtsi market where 12,000 entrepreneurs work daily. During this time of quarantine they are not allowed to go to work, so the bazaar, the market is closed, and of course many people suffer that they cannot go to work now. Then you see the chimneys of the industrial factories, plants. One of the biggest is Mash Zavod. In the Soviet times it was a huge factory. Near the river Prut nothing is built, that's why you can see the crowns of the trees there, because the Prut river is a mountain river, and in spring and summertime usually floods happen on the river, so the water raises for 6 meters and it would destroy all buildings which would be built right near the river. That's why Chernivtsi, the old town, the downtown, is situated a bit on the height above the river. This is the Turkish bridge. Under the Turkish bridge there is a Turkish street. Under the bridge, once the river flew right down this street, now it flows in the sewerage. So we can say that we have here the underground hidden river, and part of this river you can see there to the left from this well. I told you already about that. You see here the cross. It commemorates the place where the Orthodox Church used to stand of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary. It was removed from here in the 18th century, and then further there, these were totally Jewish neighborhood, and that's why during the Second World War this district became part of ghetto. About 40,000 Jews were concentrated in this neighborhood. They were not allowed to leave it, and many of them were deported to Transnistria, to the territory behind the river Dniester, to the east, to the territory of present central Ukraine, and many of them suffered and perished there in labor camps. Those who survived labor camps, they returned back at the end of the Second World War, but most of them fled further to the west, as they also did not want to stay in the Soviet Union. This was the end of the Jewish history of Chernivtsi. So other Jews came after the Second World War, but not the Austrian, not Romanian, but the Soviet Jews came here. And this is the central pedestrian street in Chernivtsi. The old name of the street is Herrengasse, the street of nobility. It's about 1 kilometer long, and it became pedestrian only in 2008. On the black lines on the sidewalks there is the name of Chernivtsi spelled in different languages. This is an old cobblestone, but it has been relayed when they have made the total renovation of the sewerage down the street for the 600 years anniversary. This is the former hotel and cafe del Europa. In the Soviet times it was the restaurant Dniester, and today it's the Panska Guralnya. It can be translated as noble distillery. By the way, it's an enterprise, the hotel, the restaurant, which belongs to our present mayor. This is his business before he was elected for a post of the mayor. You see the statue of the goddess Iris, goddess of rainbow, and some say that the iris looks a bit older here, and maybe this is also the lady who was the owner of this real estate in Austrian times. There are legends that this street was washed with soap twice in a day, every morning and every evening. The real fact is that in the Soviet times there were 5 movie theaters down this single street. In summertime terraces appear in front of the cafes and the restaurants, and also there have always been lots of bookstores down the street, which is a proof that Chernivtsi is a cultural city. All these buildings are from the end of the 19th, the beginning of the 20th century. This is mostly the commercial real estate owned by rich people, and this estate was always given for rent. So Chernivtsi has always been like the hub for international communication. People always traveled from one country to another across Chernivtsi. They stayed in Chernivtsi and they spent their money here. This is the former residence of the Orthodox Metropolitans of Bukovina and Dalmatia. Nowadays, these are the main buildings of Chernivtsi National University, named after Yuri Fedькович. The university itself was founded in 1875 in the Austrian time, and at that time it had only 3 departments, and nowadays there are 12 departments, and about 15,000 students study at Chernivtsi University. But first of all, we should speak about this historical beautiful building, because actually it was built not for the university but as the palace for the Orthodox bishops. So the construction works lasted 18 years between 1864 until 1882. The architect was Czech Josef Hlavka. Josef Hlavka was 32 years old when he made this project. These are 3 separate buildings, and the total area of this complex is 8 hectares. Out of these 8 hectares, 5 hectares is the big park which is behind this central big building. So this is the former hotel for the bishops. There was a candles factory, church museum and bishop school. In the basement there was a storage of with the barrels of wine. And behind this building there was the courtyard where the carriages of Metropolitan were repaired. Nowadays there is the garage of the university. So today in this building there is the Geographical department of Chernivtsi University. This is more plain building when we compare it to other buildings. This central building, this is the place where Metropolitan lived himself. You see beautiful chapel to the right on the corner. This is the place from where the construction of university has started. The chapel is it's named after John the New from Suceava. Is the domestic church of the metropolis, and on the top of this chapel you can see the volume cross. So this is the place where Metropolitan prayed himself. Then under the chapel there is the big dining hall of the bishops, the former dining hall. Then to the right side there is a former library of the Metropolitan on the 2nd floor. In the center, the hall of the Holy Synod, or it is also called the Marble Hall. On the left side there is a Red Hall. Nowadays this is the hall of for the councils of the Scientific Council of the University. Then in this main building, which is the administrative building of the university, there is also the Department for Foreign Languages of Chernivtsi University. This building is building number 6, or it is the Philosophical Theological Department. There is a Philological Department and the Department for Foreign Languages, for German language and Romanian Roman groups of languages. But it looks like a monastery. There is a church. It is a seminarist church of the 3 holy hierarchs, Vasily, Grigori and Johann. So the main purpose of the church, it was the church for the practice of the young bishops who studied theology in this building. So it was a seminary, it was the theological department of the university from the very beginning, even from the time when it was used by the Metropolitans. The church was built in 1878. It has always been the Orthodox church. In the Soviet times it was closed, and it was for some time used as the first computer center in Chernivtsi. You can imagine this first huge computer, Minsk 14, which occupied almost the whole space of this church. But thanks to the computer, the interior was very well preserved. So this church is one of the best preserved churches in our town. Now it's an active church again. So what happened with this palace? It was built in 1882. It was used by the Metropolitans, by the heads of the church, and until the Soviets came here. In 1940, when the Soviets came, Metropolitan fled to Bucharest. A year later he came back, and it was an active metropolis until 1944. In 1944, when the Soviets approached and the Nazis and Romanians retreated from the city, this chapel was hit by the cannon. The fire started from the right side of this building. It destroyed the library, it destroyed the apartments of the Metropolitans, and also destroyed the central hall, the former marble hall, because the wooden ceiling burned down, it collapsed. The two huge crystalline silver chandeliers with a total weight 1.5 tons, they crashed, everything was robbed, marble cracked from the high temperature. The manuscripts and archive was burned down, was destroyed by the fire, and Metropolitan left forever. The Soviets came, it was used as the museum, and also at the same time they were making the renovation. It was finished in 1957. From 1957 it became part of Chernivtsi University. Since 2011 this building is an object of the World UNESCO Heritage List. In Ukraine we have only in Kyiv, in Lviv and in Chernivtsi the architectural monuments which belong to UNESCO. Then we also have here the beautiful park. This central alley is covered with gravel. It covers the old drain system. Then on the two sides we have acacia trees, sakura trees grow on the two sides. Also there are old big magnolia trees. Just maybe in 1 or 2 weeks they will start to blossom and it will be definitely very beautiful. Another bigger park is behind this main building. We probably will see it later. Also pay attention to the style of this building. It is very mixed and architect used only the local construction material for the construction. You see the gray sandstone, you see the red bricks which were produced on the 2 brick plants which were founded by architect himself. And also there was plenty of wood because the church was a very rich organization. It owned half of all forest in the Carpathian Mountains. It possessed 1,400 objects of real estate and half of all best agricultural lands of Bukovina. It was the huge treasure and property. It gave profit to the church, and this profit, for example, was used for this construction. We are now in the most beautiful park of Chernivtsi. It is situated behind the residence of the Orthodox Metropolitans. It's the building number 5, so we are behind it. The territory of the park is 5 hectares. It is surrounded by the high wall on the perimeter, and you can get inside only when you pass the doorman, which is near the gate of the university. That's why it's very clean, very nice, very calm here. It's very well maintained. We have here the red beech trees, the yew trees, magnolia trees, and behind my back there is the well of the Metropolitan. Behind the well there is the monument to architect Josef Hlavka, who built this beautiful palace. When you look far away, you could see even the mountain Tsetsino, the highest top of Chernivtsi city. There further in the park there is the small pond. Now it's dry, but in summertime it will be filled with water. Then at the opposite end of the park there is the grot, so the kind of small rock with the cave. There is a gate which closes the entrance to the cave, and some say that it is an entrance to the underground secret path which can lead you up to the train station. The train station is at the foot of this hill. The distance from the park would be only 400 meters. Maybe it's a legend, maybe it's true, we cannot tell for sure. Soon the trees will start to blossom, magnolia trees, the chestnut trees and other trees, and will be of course very beautiful. But the park is beautiful in every season, you can believe me, in winter, in summer, in spring and in autumn as well. Well, this park is on the top of the hill. Once it was the highest top in Chernivtsi, but actually nowadays the highest top is that mountain Tsetsin, far away, where you now see the TV tower. And in the 12th century, when the fortress Chern was built of wood, it was on the flat land, it didn't have any defensive meaning. At the same time, on the top of the Tsetsin hill, there was the stone castle. Some say that it was built by the ancient Romans, and already in the 2nd century. My parents still remember the ruins, the big stones which were preserved from the stone castle. They were removed when in the Soviet times this TV tower was built. At the slope of this Tsetsino mountain there is the big district which is called Rosha. Before the Second World War, lots of Germans lived there. In 1940, when the Soviets occupied Bukovina, northern Bukovina, 44,000 Germans immigrated from Chernivtsi region, and many of them left their houses, their land, their gardens in Rosha. And after the war, new people came and settled down in Rosha. This is the greenhouse of the university, and there is a small meteorological station which is used by the students of our university. And also I would like to show you the old beech tree, which is the symbol of Bukovina. Buk is the beech tree. Let's go. This park was planted by 22 gardeners for 2 years, and this is one of the beech trees. This tree is approximately 140 years old, but this is not an ordinary beech tree, it's a red beech tree. So when the leaves will appear on its branches, they will have the dark velvet, the dark red color. In German it is Blutbuche. There are 2 of such old beech trees in this park. This is another red beech tree in this park, and we call it the always young tree because you never have wrinkles on it. Another thing that when you touch it you feel the special relaxation and special nice energy from it. So it is recommended when you visit Chernivtsi University in its park.
It works, I feel it.